with 6 cottages and administration building. Primarily the zoning history on this site in the township has been signage, temporary signs on the property, signage for the actual property owner, and then the township also has a welcome sign on the property. As far as the case history, there was a pre-submittal meeting at the township on August the 23rd, and then there was the zone change hearing at Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission in October. At the pre-submittal meeting and then also at regional planning, the residents that attended were mainly concerned with the 6+ acres in the city of Cincinnati and what may happen with that. The residents were concerned with the development of that piece and with access off of LeConte and Davlin within the city of Cincinnati into that property. Again, all of the access and all of the development that's proposed is strictly within Anderson Township and only access off of Beachmont Avenue. Other concerns were stormwater runoff and again, mainly the potential access off of those city streets. The meeting at Regional Planning was on October the 5th, and they recommended approval with conditions. Most of the conditions pertain to zoning resolution compliance. So the plans have been adjusted since the Regional Planning Commission meeting to address those concerns. So we'll see that later on in the staff report. Most of these items have been addressed already. So the property is outlined in red, which is in Anderson Township, and then there's a portion of the property again within the city of Cincinnati. So the property in red is what is under consideration for the zone change. This is the existing single-family home that's on the property. All the development is within this piece. This is the Beach Acres adjoining property. And then this is the piece within the city of Cincinnati that is not under consideration. This is the topography of the site. As you can tell, there is a ravine and a creek that runs from north-south along the east side of the property. There's also some slope on the other side, on the opposite side, on the west side, and a little bit on the north side. This is an aerial view of the site. The area that is within Anderson Township, there is tree cover on the southern and southwest portion of the site. The property in the city of Cincinnati is heavily wooded. The trees on the property in Anderson Township, some of them were damaged during the hurricane that came through. And you'll see in some of the site photos that they were topped. There are some nice trees along the frontage of Beachmont Avenue. Also, this is Bernie, and then this is LeConte, and then this is a dead-end stub, Davlin. The surrounding zoning to the south and to the west in the city of Cincinnati is zoned SF6, which is single-family, 6,000 square foot minimum lots. In the township is C, single-family, which is also a minimum of 6,000 square foot lots. Across Beachmont Avenue, across from the entrance to Beach Acres, there is two properties that are zoned planned multiple residence. One is a Mount Washington Care Center, and then the other are apartments. So these are the proposed elevation drawings of the facility, Stonecrest. They are proposed to have a mixture of building materials and be built with residential character in mind. There would be a front entry drop-off location at the front door facing Beachmont Avenue. This is the 6 acres that is under consideration for the zone change. These are just some elevation drawings of the dumpster enclosure, which was discussed at regional planning. The sign, which was not submitted for regional planning, but is the sign is consistent with the zoning. The topography maps that were submitted by the applicant that show the slope and the existing features on the site. These are the existing trees on the site that would be removed. And then this is the proposed facility. Again, 2 stories, approximately 80,000 square feet. It would be in this pattern with the main entrance coming in off of Beachmont Avenue, the drop-off area, and then the parking on the park side, I'm sorry, not the park side, but the Beach Acres side, the east side of the building. The closest single-family residences are these on Beachmont Avenue. So the attempt or the intent of the design was to have the parking and deliveries on the opposite side to limit disturbance of the single-family residents. They do have proposed courtyards for the residents of this facility that would be surrounded by privacy fences to ensure security of the residents between these two wings. And then the detention basin is proposed on the south corner of the property. Again, the topography map with and the site plan. This is the landscaping plan, which is compliant with zoning. Extra landscaping and evergreen screening was proposed in this portion of the site to ensure buffering between the driveway and the block headlights from cars turning into the access from the nearest single-family residence. And then the landscaping along the frontage of the facility as well as the perimeter of the parking lot. The landscape detail, I know it's hard to, you can't see that from the audience, but these are the species which is in your zoning commission packet. And then this is the lighting plan, which is compliant. All of the lights, the foot candles are required to be 0.1 at the property line when adjacent to single family, and these are that or less at all the property lines. So these are some of the site photos. This is the existing home on the property, looking from Beachmont Avenue to the existing home. The next slide is looking toward Mount Washington, so looking west on Beachmont Avenue. These are some of the pictures from the area where the facility would be constructed, looking back at the wooded area on the back portion of the site. And again, these are some of the trees that were damaged during the hurricane. There's multiple beech trees that were damaged during the hurricane. This was a path around the perimeter of the of the property that was it was done by the applicant in order to do soil boring and testing around the property. So that's why there is somewhat of a path around the property. So findings, again, this is a zone change request, so we look at compliance with the township zoning resolution as well as the applicable plans. So the first item, and again, regional planning, the majority of their conditions pertain to zoning code compliance, and the plan has been modified, so everything is compliant with the township zoning resolution. Our applicable plans that we looked at, first and foremost, is the Anderson Township Comprehensive Plan. The future land use identified as this property for institutional use. And a little bit of the history of the institutional land use on our comp plan. All of the properties that were actually constructed for institutional land use were identified for institutional land use. And in lieu of updating that with our update in 2017, it was impossible to look at all the institutional uses in the township and determine what is the best future use for that property. So it was determined at that time to take each one on its own merit when it came to the zoning commission. So, but however, this type of facility is an institutional use. So it actually, I wouldn't put too much emphasis on the land use designation, but more so on the text in the zoning or in the comprehensive plan. So the elements or the chapters that we looked at were the people and housing, quality of life, and land use and development. And staff was of the opinion that this proposed facility is consistent with all these goals. And then with the update of our comprehensive plan, which was adopted in January, we identified key sites within the township that we felt were underdeveloped or had the potential for development, and this Beach Acres property was one of those sites. So there was a specific market study done on this site and other sites in the township, but this one in particular scored very well on housing. And senior housing. And so that was actually a recommendation that if zoning were to change on this property or if the uses, that type of use scored very well. Design guidelines. So we look at site planning, which is the layout of the parking, the building, pedestrian accessibility. The applicants are proposing a sidewalk along Beachmont Avenue, which is a zoning code requirement, and encourage as our pedestrian plan does call for sidewalks on Beachmont Avenue in the future, and there's a park in the vicinity. So there's a sidewalk in the city of Cincinnati that ends just east of Bernie. It goes to about the second house within the city of Cincinnati, and then it stops in the township. So in the future, there would be a logical connection from Bernie to Beach Acres Park. From the other direction, there is a sidewalk to Tallberry on one side of Beachmont Avenue. But the hope is to tie Beachmont into Beach Acres Park. So we do encourage that sidewalk to be constructed. We also encourage some type of pedestrian connection from this facility directly to Beach Acres Park in the south of the property, in the southwest, and I'll show you that on a plan. Because we feel that they are compatible uses, and if the residents from this facility aren't able to walk, family members visiting them or staff that work there, it may make a logical connection from the back of the property versus having to come out to the sidewalk on Beachmont and go on Beachmont. The architecture we already talked about is residential in character. It does have sloped roofs. It has a mixture of building materials. Facade design, it does have a prominent entry feature that does face Beachmont Avenue. And the outdoor spaces, again, they're mainly geared toward the residents that live there, which appropriately so. Again, we touched on the trails plan. So staff's recommendation is for approval based off of the following reasons: that it is consistent with the goals from the comprehensive plan. The use is compatible with surrounding uses. As mentioned earlier, there is Mount Washington Care Center across the Beachmont Avenue, a compatible use. Beach Acres facility is an institutional use, and we feel that there is an appropriate buffer between this use and the single family on Beachmont. There's still the 6+ acres of undeveloped land within the city of Cincinnati that also provides a natural buffer from this facility to those residents on LeConte and Bernie. Number 3, the health and the safety of the neighborhood of the township are maintained. And then number 4 is consistent with other property in the area. So not only consistent with surrounding zoning, but also consistent with other property in the area. So regional planning had a list of conditions. Most of those have been satisfied. The ones that we feel that would carry over are: the site shall be limited to one freestanding sign. The sidewalk shall be constructed along the entire frontage, which has been added to the site plan. Number 3, the construction limits and temporary fencing shall be indicated to ensure all proposed woodland preservation areas are protected during construction. And then the conditions recommended by staff is a pedestrian easement and connection in the southeast corner. And then number 2, we encourage the applicants to consider a vehicular easement for future access to the 6+ acres in the city of Cincinnati. And the reason is to allow, if that property is to develop in the future, and if it develops in a way that is compatible with the Stonecrest, we feel that access should be solely off of Beachmont Avenue. And if an easement is required during the zone change, that would prevent them from having to come back to the zoning commission. If that property is developed as it is currently zoned for single family, we feel that the appropriate entrance to that property would be off of the single family streets in the city of Cincinnati, so it wouldn't really be necessary. Regardless, if that property is developed in some other fashion than single family, it would require zone change through the city of Cincinnati. So that is the reasoning or the logic behind that recommended condition. I did want to show you, as far as the pedestrian connection, just to be clear, actually it's probably, as you can see, their detention basin is proposed in the south corner of the property, and there is a steep ravine. So pedestrian accessibility in this area is probably unlikely and unpractical. However, I'm going the wrong direction. Yes. If possible, so this is Beach Acres property, there is a service drive to a service building. So of course, a pedestrian easement while it may be made on the property in question, Beach Acres, as the property owner, this would also have to allow for pedestrian connection. And it is very possible, to hop right on the service drive to get to Beach Acres Park. So the alternative would be to go down Beachmont Avenue until you get to the entrance to the park. So be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Why don't we start with, for questions for staff, start down at the far end with Commissioner Boone.
I just want to confirm that you are going to require a sidewalk. Is that correct?
So as sidewalk is a zoning requirement along the street, so they are proposing that and showing that in their plans. We're also recommending that a second pedestrian connection be made,
Okay.
or at least an easement for future connection, because Beach Acres would be required to allow them to do this.
Okay. What's the setback? It looked like it's very close to the property line there on the back side of the property.
The setback,
Right there.
I have to look at the plan.
25?
I don't have the
That's fine.
exact setback, but I can find out for you. They do own the property on the other side.
Okay. All right, that's all I have. Yep.
Paul, I think you said this, but I just want to confirm that the applicant also owns that 6 acres in Cincinnati.
The applicant is under contract to purchase.
Okay. And I think that's all I have, because I think you did a great job answering my questions.
Okay.
Yes, that was a very good staff report, I agree. I just had a question on the parking. I think I saw somewhere in there a parking count of 58, and I just am curious, is that consistent with the code requirements for that, and with the number of residents at peak times and staff and visitors and stuff? It looked like the parking's a little light to me, but I was just wondering.
It is a little light. Our zoning requirements are 1 space per 2 beds, and there are 118 beds, I believe, proposed. 118,
Should be 59.
yes. So actually, they're within the 10%.
Okay, all right, thanks, that's all.
And the setback is 25 feet,
Okay, thank you.
99 beds, okay.
Commissioner McBride?
Yeah, just a couple of questions.
So actually, that's,
The 6 acres that's to the rear that's in the city, is that landlocked then? Because it looked on the one side like the Stubb Street, there's actually property in between the...
I do not believe it's landlocked. I think that property has right-of-way into from Davlin. And then
Okay.
there is a small, it wouldn't be enough for access off of Bernie. There's a,
Can you put up the cages slide?
yes.
again?
So there's, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but the right-of-way actually is from Davlin. There's a small sliver of property here, but it wouldn't be large enough for access, so it would have to come in off of Davlin. If this property were to be developed as single-family homes as it's currently zoned, this would be the logical connection.
And did you say then that NAP has an option to, I'm sorry, NP Development has an option then to purchase that property?
I
or-
think it's part of this whole sale.
Okay. And so then the preference would be to, if it wasn't single-family, then to run all that traffic through the parking lot, past their service?
Again, right, just looking in the future, if the property was developed for something other than single-family, we just feel that the access should come in off of Beachmont Avenue than the single-family neighborhood off of Davlin, if it were a compatible facility. It's hard to predict exactly what may happen. I guess our intent of suggesting a condition like that was to prevent them from having to come back to the Township Zoning Commission for access. You know, you would be approving this or you would be approving this zone change, but not knowing what the future use of that property may be.
Or how much traffic it might
Or how much
generate
traffic,
through the
yes.
parking lot with the
Right.
service entrance. I mean, I
think that's-
understand what you're
yeah.
saying, but I have some concerns. I mean, if you're talking about elderly people, you know, some of their residents are going to have cars backing out of these parking spaces, and then we've got, I don't know what kind of, you know, skilled nursing center or something to the rear. I just don't know that we wouldn't want to see that
Well,
again.
I think it'd be a good discussion point with the applicant.
But at the end of the day, if that's City of Cincinnati, we really wouldn't have any future jurisdiction.
Not on the
Yeah.
use, but we
Yeah.
certainly would on the access.
Right. If we did it in the front of it.
Right.
Yeah. Any other questions? Staff? I had a question, I believe it was under the, when it went before the county about the ODOT doing a traffic study and access on the State Route 125 Beachmont
Yes.
for left turns and different things. There might be some site issues coming out of the proposed area going left. Has that been addressed or
I
looked at?
don't know if that has been completed yet, but we can ask the engineer.
Okay. And then you keep talking about the access to the park, but that would have to go through the Beach Acres Parenting,
That is correct.
which is a separate, it's not the park district.
That's correct.
So has
It's a
any
separate, it's a
discussions been
separate
held
piece.
with them to, I know be a great idea to have that easement, but that's a discussion down the line? Okay.
At this point, you know, we would, if the applicant and the commission is agreeable to that, we would want to ensure that they would provide an easement if that connection can be made now, or at a future, if Beach Acres, the rest of Beach Acres were to redevelop it or go before, you know, a zone change.
Okay. All right. Anyone want a second chance at staff for questions? Okay. And the applicant
Yes.
The applicant would like to come forward? Please state your name and your address and your affiliation. Okay. I don't know, these
Good
are you have
evening.
electronically available or? Okay.
My name is Sherry Guyed, and I am from Stonecrest Senior Living. It is our senior living arm of NP Development. We are based out of Kansas City. That way? All right. As I mentioned, Stonecrest Senior Living is our senior living arm of NP Development. We are based out of Kansas City. We have additional offices in St. Louis. We actually have one here in Cincinnati and in Chicago. We are active in a variety of markets among different asset classes, including industrial, multifamily, senior living, and self-storage. So Paul did a great job of going through that staff report, and so just to reorient everybody where we are along Beachmont Avenue. So it is assisted living and memory care. So it is actually only 99 beds. I know it was said 118, but we are 99 beds, 89 units. 60 of those will be assisted living and 29 memory care. It will be 2 stories, approximately 80,000 square feet on those 6 acres, and 58 spaces of parking. So most of our residents do not actually have vehicles, and the few that do don't really drive. So the 58 spaces is sufficient for peak times as well as our staff, which we will have approximately 50 to 60, but only 25 to 30 at any one time. So we're currently zoned residential C, and the proposed change is to plan multi-DD. So just to recap what we've been through, we did hold a neighborhood meeting on 8/23. We were at Hamilton County Regional on 10/5, and here we are before you on 10/23. This would be a rendering of what one of our communities, what it would look like. As you can see, we do build in a residential character with stone and siding. These are some of our communities that are currently open and in operation. The top one is our Troy, Michigan, and Clayton View in St. Louis. As you can see, we're consistent in our residential character and the materials we use. Burlington Creek is in our home headquartered city of Kansas City, and Town and Country is in St. Louis as well. And we really do pride ourselves in the features that we are able to provide to our residents, including the courtyards that were mentioned earlier, fitness center. We do have a theater, really warm, inviting libraries, and bright open corridors. So as was mentioned, Anderson Township has recognized this need in their community, and there are several instances where this is pointed out in the comprehensive plan. So Paul mentioned earlier about the people in housing goal, about providing senior living for the aging population of Anderson Township, as now 15% of the total population is now over that retirement age. So we do our own independent market analysis of a 5-mile radius. So currently the estimated need in this 5-mile radius is 518 assisted living units and 222 memory care beds. The current supply within that 5-mile radius is 99 assisted living units and 60 memory care units. Of the current existing communities, the occupancy rates are almost 100% occupied in all of the existing communities. And Anderson Township conducted their own study of those occupancy rates, and that's listed below. And again, the site plan that you've seen. So we are 150 feet setback from the nearest neighbor. We do pay close attention to thoughtful placement of our parking and of our entrances and services. A senior living community is a very quiet use. We are low traffic as most of our residents do not drive, and our peak times are really during shift change, which is around noon. And again, like I said, we will have about 25 to 30 staff at any one time. So we do have 24-hour staff that are emergency trained, so that also helps to reduce our impact on EMS services. And at this time, I can take any questions. I do also have Jed from our St. Louis office, Tim from our Cincinnati office, Josh from Kleinger's, so they're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Start with Commissioner McBride this time.
Wasn't prepared for that. Great. So you've got the memory care beds. Are those, do you require a CON for those?
So we are licensed as, I believe it's a regulatory care home, I believe is our license here.
So you will have CONs for those beds, or you will not?
Do we have CONs?
No, it's a licensure process, so it's an applied license, but it's not an actual certificate of need.
Okay. And then the other units then are the assisted living, so they will have full kitchens, or?
No, they will not.
They
We will have a community.
microwave, small refrigerator kind of deal?
No. So we have a community dining space with a commercial kitchen.
Okay. But
So
in
not
the-
in the rooms. They will not have, they have a small sink and no cooking facilities.
Okay, but a refrigerator?
Refrigerator.
Okay. I guess if they want to bring in their own microwaves, they can do that. So how many of the units are the 2-bedroom units?
So we have,
It's like we have about 6 to 8.
Okay. which isn't very many for this kind of facility. I mean, don't they typically like two-bedroom units so that there's some place for stuff?
The most common unit is a single bedroom and
Okay.
actually studio, because those rates are a little bit less expensive. From time to time, we have a resident that may have a spouse that still wants to live with them, and in that instance, we have 6 to 8, usually two-bedroom units that allows that spouse to live with them.
Okay. And what about are the rate range? Just,
Our base rate is going to start at 3,800.
okay. And then the number of employees, you say is about 25 on any one shift, but there's going to be an overlap when you're going to have a shift change, and they're going to have to transfer information and so forth. So if that shift change takes place in the middle of the day when there's maybe doctors visiting or other visitors, or of the 6 two-bedroom, and you say this other spouse might be active, so they've got a car, I mean, how comfortable are you guys really with the 58 parking spaces?
So at the strictest of requirements, it would be at a 0.6 ratio, and I believe that would put us at 53 spots, and that would be at the strictest.
So food deliveries are obviously coming back to the, southwest corner of the building. And how do you get do you get them in a box truck, or does Cisco come with a regular semi, or?
So sometimes the smaller deliveries will come in just like a regular type van, and then Cisco will come. It is very infrequent, so we will have maybe one delivery a week.
And with a box truck or with a semi?
Usually, a lot of times it's dependent on the food service provider. It's usually the 36 to 40 foot truck rather than the 52. It's very rare that you see like an actual
Okay,
semi.
I mean, did you guys put a
Yeah.
turning radius on that back there? Because I think that,
Yes, it's actually, they tend to work with.
Can you come up and actually speak into the microphone? Both gentlemen, thank you. If you want to identify your name and your affiliation as well.
Yeah, my name's Josh Shaw. I'm project manager with the Kleinger's Group. We have done turning analysis. Basically, the site is very tight, so what they have agreed to is that it would be box trucks doing deliveries. So you wouldn't have semis trying to turn around in that tighter spot back in there. So
are you going to
due
use a rollout dumpster then for the same kind of?
No, the dumpster trucks can get in there.
Okay.
We have auto turn and everything, so we
Right.
run those simulations in our office, and we've done the simulations to make sure that the dumpster trucks and everybody can get in there feasibly.
Okay. And then one more question for you before you sit down. So it's just marked basin? Is it detention or retention?
It's detention,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Let's see. On your landscaping plan, the courtyard areas where the residents are going to be spending a lot of time, you don't have any plant material? But I'm guessing when we come back for the final development plan, we're going to see a lot more detailed landscape plan, and this commissioner would rather see something larger than the minimum 2-inch caliber tree. Your plant schedule also needs to tell us the number of that plant material that you're going to be planting, not just the names and the size.
Okay.
Also, on your landscape bed, or landscape sign, landscape plan, your sign is not located, and in fact, you've got a tree proposed to be planted right where your sign is going, so you might want to look at that as well. And what is the overall height of the building? Because your elevations only label it to the top of the second floor. What is it to the top of the roof?
Say it was 42. Yeah, it's usually around 38 to 44, somewhere in that, depending on if you measure it from the midpoint or from the peak. If it's measured to the midpoint, it's generally 38.6.
Okay. And then, just like, do you have any facilities in the Ohio market at all?
Not yet, no.
Okay. All right, that's all I had at this point in time. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Commissioner Eliff?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple questions on the easement that staff was talking about in their recommendations. Where do you envision that easement going, or do you envision it going there, and how does that work with your operations on the site?
The pedestrian easement to the beach acres, or the vehicular?
cross-access easement.
So we have had conversations regarding that easement, and we have determined. Oh,
I snuck up here.
okay. Yeah, if you want to, I was going to talk about the covenant first, but go
The idea with the easement would come off of the, oh, sorry. Yes, the idea of the easement would come off of the round, the circle, the turnaround spot there. It would continue to the southwest. However, this is kind of one of the first times that we've been really looking into detail at this. It does make me nervous to have through traffic with parking spaces right there, especially at a facility that's got elderly.
And the easement, so we said this would be a chance to discuss it, so I'm curious about your perspective on the easement, because as it was described, it's got subjective elements to it, and I'm trying to think how that can be drafted and be effective.
So like was mentioned, at this time, we have nothing proposed for that 6 acres. We do know that it would have to go through the whole process in the city of Cincinnati, so we don't have anything proposed on it right now.
Okay, yeah, it's not an easy answer for that.
What I would recommend, looking into the future with this, is if there was ever a time when that 6 acres was developed, that at that point you would have a gated access for fire only, and the fire trucks typically, if there's just a single gate across it, they can bust the gate open to get there, but it would give them an access from another street to the facility. But I would not recommend that we make that into something that through traffic can travel.
Are you talking about the easement or that point onto the street over there?
No,
other
the
street?
the easement to the 6 acres, back to the 6 acres.
So you're saying you would just limit it to emergency access?
Yes, I would make it emergency
I
access
see.
only, would be my recommendation if it was to be followed through on.
Okay, all right. So the memory care aspect of it, this design is interesting to me. All the memory care I've seen of late for sure aren't 2 stories, and they're normally separated, almost a totally different building, not a wing of a building. How's that going to work?
So it is a separate wing, and the memory care is only located on 1 floor, and it is secured access. The courtyard is secured access as well.
Okay. The finished materials on the building, I just wanted to ask the question. It says you're citing cement fiberboard. Is that what you use, or is it vinyl?
It's a James Hardy product, so a
Okay.
Hardy board,
All right.
cementitious.
Yes, sir. Thank you. What's your? How do you envision this facility functioning 30 years from now, when the population that will be filling it in the next 10 years will be declining? There won't be as much need for this kind of thing. I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, but this is your business. What's your long-term plans for this?
So a lot of the communities in the area have lasted for that many
Right.
years. So we do still foresee this as being a needed use in the community. I don't see that waning as the population ages, and I'm sure.
Yeah, something to add too. So one of the things that we look is the live births age curve. If you've ever looked at that recently, the baby boomers, they haven't hit our target age yet. So the actual the curve, if you will, on the graph hasn't even hit the low point to where it's increasing over the next 40 years. So from a demand from a demand aspect, we're not even close to hitting that. So we don't see any issues with it.
Gotcha. Okay, very good. Your staff composition, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because it was unclear to me if there's going to be, I did hear, and I think that's a great plan. Well, let me just ask a question. What's your staff composition going to be as far as their training, what different levels? You'll obviously have a site administrator. What else are you going to have there?
So we do have an executive director. We do have an executive director. It will be 24-hour staffing, and we will have registered nurses on site as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Commissioner DeBaggio?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for a clear plan and one that you actually listened to groups before us. question about the memory care unit courtyard. Is that the only courtyard that's actually enclosed by a vinyl fence? It looked like it on the plan. In many ways, it makes sense. Yes.
So the assisted living, there are actually two separate courtyards. There's an assisted
Right.
living courtyard. It's enclosed by it's a 48-inch tall, it's like a wrought iron aluminum fence, so it has a visual, so you can actually see out and see into the trees.
Okay.
The memory care fence is 8 foot, and it's solid, and it's cedar. And the reason for that is because you don't want any elopement risk with your memory care residents, and you really don't want them looking out because that inhibits the risk of them wanting to get over the fence. So it's solid fence in the memory care.
Okay, but it's cedar, it's not vinyl as the plan is showing?
It's cedar. The plans call out cedar.
Oh, they
8-foot
do?
cedar, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, and it'll be a stained residential style, so.
okay. I'm assuming there's only one dumpster location, is that correct? Correct. All right, the proposed detention basin, I want to make sure I read this right, I may not have. What I'm showing or saw that it was designed to handle up to a rate of 5.43 inches per hour, up to almost 55 minutes, is that correct?
Yeah, it's designed to meet the Hamilton County regs on all the stormwater. So it's gonna release at or less than what the current site releases. So any downstream flood concerns or anything like that, there shouldn't be any, because we won't be allowed to release more water than what's currently being released off of that site. So they'll have drawdown times with smaller orifices that will allow slower release rates, and then as it gets to a higher elevation, that's when it releases a little bit more.
All right, if, we've had a couple of interesting rainstorms past couple of years, if it should overflow, it looks to me like it's headed towards the Beach Acres Parenting Center, that property. I'm just curious, where's it going from there?
No, you're fine. It's actually, we design our detention basin so that when they flood route down into that existing stream. So if it's a major storm that would flood over the detention basin, which generally is very rare, then it would be in that stream, and the stream would be the path the water would go, which is the way that it would go without the development in place, because we're not allowed to divert water from one watershed direction to another.
Okay. Trying to think if everybody's been very good on questions today. I think that's it for me.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Commissioner Boone?
Yes. Talked a little bit about EMS services, and I'm curious, with some of your previous properties, can you tell us a little bit about the impact that they've had on the EMS services?
So on average, we probably have 5 to 6 a month ambulance visits. The way we staff with our registered nurses and the 24-hour staffing really does help to minimize that.
Okay. Have you had any outliers? I know you've done several of these around the country. Do you have some that maybe have been much worse?
It's a pretty good average.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then is this all private pay, or are you going to be applying for Medicaid waivers?
Private pay.
All private pay, starting at $3,800?
Correct.
Okay. So who's your typical market then for this?
So
Obviously, we know the age, but-
typically it's over 75, and they are people that do already currently live in your community or have children that live in your community.
All right, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. I just had a couple questions. One was your, the slide, I hadn't seen it before, about the market supply, and you said a 5-mile radius. Did that include the New England Club, the Mount Washington Care Center, the number of beds?
So the New England Club is actually all independent living, so there's a different level of care there, and they are currently almost at 100% as it is.
They didn't go into your statistics as far as counting apples to apples, because you consider them, I know personally they do have in care, it's a separate company, but they have people that do come in
Like
and stay.
home health and-
Right, 724. So, but they weren't in your bed count for current supply.
Of assisted living and memory care, no.
Okay. And we touched on, but tell me again, you don't have any plans for the property behind the city of Cincinnati, but you're,
It is part of
Looking
the...
to buy it?
It is part of the package deal.
so it's included in the, okay.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay. Second chance? Any commissioners?
So just going back to the survey, on the memory care beds did include the Arden Court down on Clough, right?
The Arden Court's correct.
Oh, I did have one more that was just of interest is a lot of the residents have pets. Where do they take the pets? Is it the common area?
So their pets are allowed to come visit, but not to stay.
Oh, it's not full, okay. Thank you.
Actually,
Okay.
Sorry,
Oh.
we are pet friendly. And we,
Pet friendly, but not overnight.
no, it's overnight. And we actually, most of our communities will have a built-in dog run. So we have a little fenced-in area where residents can take their dogs.
Is that shown anywhere in the
outside.
plans?
It always goes into the
Yes.
courtyards.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a fenced-in dog
Yeah.
walk area.
All right, this time we'll open it up. If anyone would like to speak in favor of the proposed change, come forward, state your name, your address, and any affiliation you might have.
Hello, I'm Jim Mason. I'm the president and CEO of Beach Acres Parenting Center. I have had that role since 1989, and I first came to Beach Acres in 1978, actually when it was an orphanage. So I'm quite familiar with the history of it. At that time, we housed about 72 kids living on campus and served about 300 children a year. Today, we are a 21st century parenting center. We serve 5 counties, over 20,000 kids and parents every year in Southwest Ohio. And clearly, we are a community-based organization. We're in 30 schools, and we're in homes and pediatric offices and so on. So obviously, our campus has become rather obsolete for today's mission. We have been very serious and intentional about the property because it's obviously a significant asset for us, and it's a significant asset and valuable to the community. So as we think about the use of that property and the highest and best use, we have 2 primary criteria. One is that the asset become liquid so it feeds our mission and our stated purpose and growth in the communities we serve, primarily including Anderson Township. The second is that we be good community citizens and that we stay in touch with the needs of Anderson Township, and we're sensitive to those, and we have done so with that over the years. That said, I think the folks from, Paul's presentation to you and the folks from Stonecrest have made a very adequate point that this meets the needs of the community, and it also meets the needs of achieving our mission and strategy. One thing that I will say parenthetically is obviously I've been at Beach Acres for almost 40 years, and I have in this process heard of a rumor that somehow at some point Beach Acres ensured residents that we would never sell the property, and to my knowledge, being the oldest surviving employee or board member at Beach Acres, that statement has never been made to anybody. At least in my presence, and certainly I would not have authorized it if it were. So I just want to sort of comment on that. Questions, or do you ask me questions?
First off,
or you just
thank you
take
for your role and your longevity. About the easement that we've talked about from the subject property through your property to Beach Acres Park.
Something we would discuss.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Other commissioners, questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll open up for anyone who wants to speak against or opposed to the development. Please come forward, state your name, your address. Going? Okay, thank you. This time we'll have discussion among the commissioners unless we're ready to.
Excuse me, I'd like to speak for.
I'm sorry.
For it.
Forward? Okay, I'm sorry. We'll reopen it. Please come forward, state your name, your address, and any affiliation you might have.
I'm not used to this kind of.
No worries.
My name is Craig Souders. I own the property at 6775 Beachmont Avenue, which is probably going to be the closest property to what they are building. At first, I did not want anything to go in there, of course, because I like the openness and the privacy that it brings. But I'm not stupid either. I know something is eventually going to go in here. You cannot have that type of property just sitting there forever and ever and ever. And after listening to the first meeting that they had with the townspeople, after listening to them, looking it over and researching it, I don't think it would be, I think it's something that probably should go there instead of some other things that I've heard of in the past. I'm a new property owner. I've lived there for a while. But over the years, I've heard of like hospices going in and stuff like that. And that would, you know, not be good. Just the traffic and everything else. But looking at this and after listening to them and seeing the plans, I think this would probably be good for the community. It's a nice looking complex, and can't imagine it's going to hurt the tax base of any. So,
Well, thank you for your input.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So again, we'll close those in favor very quickly. Anyone opposed, come forward. Okay, now we will open it up to the commissioners if anyone wants to have some discussion or if we're ready for a motion.
Well, I mean, I think the use is really appropriate, given the location and given the fact that none of us are getting any younger, except maybe me, but I think that's a good use for that property in terms of a trip generator, in terms of a quiet use and that kind of thing. I guess the only kind of, I'll say, hang-up that I have is this vehicular easement, and I'm really of a mind to not include that, because I'd like to see how that 6 acres gets developed before we put that traffic through this parking lot with those residents. I'm just not feeling very comfortable with that. And if it means that they have to come back to this commission for that, they're going to be 4 to 5 months anyway in the city rezoning the back piece.
Sure.
So, you know, I don't think that's putting a huge burden on them to ask them to do that. But I think the building looks good. I think they need some work on the landscape plan. I mean, I think the use itself is very appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd add to that. I agree with those comments exactly, and it's really surprising that there was this objective market study a while ago that seemed to be right on point, and the development company also picked up on that. The other thing I've noticed around here is we have seen a lot of these kind of developments in our outer counties, which is great, and I was wondering, and I had heard, I don't know the nuances of it, but something about need and certification and bed counts and that sort of thing. And I think it is, and maybe Hamilton County has got some, but we have some great facilities here, but it's great to see a new investment here, recognizing, as we heard, and I don't dispute those facts, that the inn is full, and this will provide more space, I think, for a lot of Anderson Township residents who like it here and want to stay nearby. So, and I was impressed with the quality of the finishes, and I think it is a good fit there. I'd agree with the comments from the audience and the board.
Okay.
I'm in full agreement with those who have spoken so far. I am not crazy about the idea of the vehicular easement simply because we don't know what's going there at this point in time, and neither do they. I would welcome the pedestrian easement just because it starts that ball rolling if they could make it work out. But overall, I think it's a great design, and I think it's a great fit and needed in our community.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Boone?
Yeah, I think it's a great fit, too. I went on your company website, and, I mean, you have a very good reputation across the country, so I think you know, I'm excited. So I think it looks like it makes a lot of sense, so.
Okay. I agree with what's been said so far. I do agree with the easement, not tying it up at this point with that. My concern has always been is traffic making lefts on the Beachmont from anywhere without signalization is problematic. And with if somebody's, I know a lot of the residents will not have cars, but if a spouse is visiting and they're elderly, there's always, you know, you can be 55 and have issues making a left versus 75. So anyway, my 2 cents. All right, at this point, We want to open it up for a motion?
I would make a motion that we recommend approval of Case 2-2017 Anderson, Beachmont Stonecrest, 6881 Beachmont Avenue, subject to the conditions, the 3 conditions that were recommended to us from the Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission, and also including the recommendation from staff regarding the pedestrian easement and connection to the Beach Acres property.
So just for clarification, on page 5, it's taking 1, 2, and 3 of the county and number 1, but not the number 2, which you talk about the vehicular.
That's correct.
Okay. Do you have that as far as where she's going? Okay. Commissioners, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Scott, Commissioner. Okay.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Ms. Sebaggio?
Yes.
Mr. Boone?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes. Okay, with that, it is approved. Staff, do we have a November case at this point?
Not yet.
No, we don't, do we? Not
Okay.
yet. We'll let you know if one comes up.
Great. I would like a motion to adjourn.
If we do that meeting, it falls on the Monday after Thanksgiving. So
27th.
it's, yeah, so just, if
Okay,
you're not
Commissioners.
available, please let me know.
Everyone, Commissioners, did you hear that? It's the Monday after Thanksgiving. Okay.
But we may not have a meeting, so, as soon as the deadline passes, I'll let you know if we have any applications.
Thank you for that. Motion to adjourn. Second.
I second.
All right. Hi. Thank you.